turns here, once the site of the city of Beth Shemesh. Its ruins lie about 20 miles west of Jerusalem, still surrounded by fertile farmland, just as it was 3,000 years ago.
The people of Beth Shemesh were gathering the wheat harvest in the valley. When they looked up and saw the ark, they ran rejoicing to meet it. 1 Samuel 6:13.
20 years pass before the Philistines launch an attack on Israel again. This time the attempt comes at a place called Mizpah, where the Jews had gathered in prayer to reaffirm their faith. Now God himself intervenes in the battle.
And the Lord thundered in a loud voice against the Philistines that day, and so confounded them that they were routed before the Israelites. 1 Samuel 7:10.
Victorious in battle, the Israelites now call for a profound change in leadership. Instead of being commanded by a prophet or a judge, they demand to be ruled by a king.
And one of the main reasons they call for a king, according to the chapter, is we want a king to fight for us so that we can be like the other nations. The implication being so that we can be like the Philistines.
So, ironically, the tribes of Israel unite into a kingdom, becoming more like the Philistines, the enemy they despise.
Saul blew the horn throughout the land, and all Israel was told, Saul has slain the Philistine governor. Indeed, Israel has become obnoxious to the Philistines. 1 Samuel 13:3.
King Saul renews the war against the Philistines, attempting to drive them from Israelite territory. But he cannot achieve a significant victory. This may be due to the superior iron weapons used by the Philistines. But even so, their military strength may well have depended on other important factors.
The Philistines were the dominant military power in the region for about 2 centuries. Their skill as warriors is known somewhat from the archaeological record. They had the usual array of weapons that the other great powers had, but their true key to their success must have been in their tactics, in their military tactics and strategies that were used in battles, in actual combat.
The Bible tells us little about Philistine tactics, but in time they become boastful and complacent in their victories. Eventually they torment Israel with a new threat, a huge, towering warrior, the likes of whom have never been seen before.
And there marched forth from the ranks of the Philistines a certain infantryman from Gath, whose name was Goliath. 1 Samuel 17:4.
At first, no Israelite dares take up the challenge against the giant. But then, a young man appears, carrying nothing more than a slingshot. His name is David.
When the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him because he was only a lad. "Am I a dog," he said, "that you come after me with a stick?" 1 Samuel 17:42.
David slays the powerful giant with a single stone aimed at the head. He is proclaimed a national hero, but the Philistine army remains intact. They are as much a threat as ever before. But a fateful turn of events will lead to their downfall. It begins with King Saul's sudden jealousy of David, now the new hero of the people.
Saul tried to strike David with the spear, but he broke away from Saul, who stuck the spear in the wall. Then David fled and escaped. 1 Samuel 19:10.
David and 600 of his loyal followers are now on the run, hiding out in the rugged wilderness of Judea. King Saul becomes obsessed with finding him and putting him to death. But the enterprising young Israelite hero finds refuge in an unlikely place, in the enemy camp of the Philistines.
David said to himself, "Any day now I might be taken by Saul. There is nothing better for me to do but to escape to the Philistines." 1 Samuel 27:1.
He actually found himself at a certain point in the camp, in the cities of the Philistines, whose king was delighted to have him, because when you have a great warrior, especially one of your enemy's famous people, then it's a great accomplishment on your behalf. But David managed to finesse it so that he never actually really did harm to the Israelites, which is what the king thought he was doing. But the way that he finessed it was to attack a local Philistine village instead, and to kill every man, woman, and child, so there'd be nobody left alive to say that David had attacked us, when the king thought he was attacking the Israelites. And that's pretty rough.
King Saul has maintained his relentless war against the Philistines, but is about to meet a grisly fate. The end will come here, at Mount Gilboa.
The Philistines fought with Israel, and as the men of Israel fled before them, falling wounded on Mount Gilboa, the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons. 1 Samuel 31:1.
Rather than be taken alive, Saul commits suicide by falling upon his own sword. To celebrate their victory, the Philistines mutilate his corpse and place it on public display. By now, Saul's army has been decimated, the kingdom cut in two. With Saul's death, the Philistines have unknowingly set themselves on a path leading to their own ultimate defeat. But with Saul out of the way, it is now safe for the renegade David to return to his people. He has remained their hero and is crowned new king of Israel.
When the Philistines heard that David had become anointed king over Israel, they came up in search of him. 2 Samuel 5:17.
A fierce battle is fought on the plain of Rephaim, just outside Jerusalem. David repulses the first Philistine attack, but they regroup and strike again. The young king prays for divine advice, and God responds.
Don't make a frontal attack. Go behind them and come out by the trees. When you hear a sound like marching feet in the tops of the trees, attack. For it will signify that the Lord has prepared the way for you and will destroy them. So David did as the Lord had instructed him, and destroyed the Philistines all the way from Gibeon to Gaza. 2 Samuel 5:23.
In this single military engagement, David shatters Philistine domination so thoroughly that they will never again be a threat to Israel. The victory is a momentous one, but even today it remains one of the most puzzling in biblical history.
We wish we knew how he did it, but we don't. The biblical accounts of the battle of David against the Philistines, what he did, how he did it, why he did it, these accounts are sorely lacking. We don't know exactly how David conquered the Philistine nation, but we know that he did. We know that after King David, the Philistines ceased to exist as a force threatening Israel.
The answer to the mystery may lie in David's sojourn with the Philistines while he was hiding from Saul.
It seems to me that in those years when he was in exile with the Philistines, he must have learned quite a bit about Philistine military tactics, techniques, armaments, and the use of logistics in support of an army. And all of this he put into good use when he later on, after some years, became the king of the Hebrews and had to face his former overlords as his enemies now. And he was able to put this knowledge into use and defeat them with their own games, at their own tactics, and at their own strategies.
It is likely that David's army may well have included mercenary Philistine soldiers, paid by him to fight against their own side.
There is room for speculation about many foreigners involved in David's rise to victory, and including Philistine involvement in David's rise to victory. David was not above the use of mercenary forces who were dedicated to David through the riches that resulted from his great victories, as well as through any moral dedication to David's God.
While King David's victory destroys Philistine military power, their civilization lingers for many centuries. Then, suddenly, it vanishes, so inexplicably that the mystery has never been solved. Seeking clues to the capricious disappearance of the Philistines, archaeologists working here at Ekron and at other sites have uncovered layer by layer a dramatic sequence of events in Philistine life.
We are seeing here the lower city, the Philistine city that was built at the beginning of the 12th century. This is the elite zone where the palaces, the shrines of the Philistines were found. And it's, in a way, very exciting because we go through history. We start in the 12th century in these great buildings, and we end here in the 7th century, which is above me. So in a way, we walk through the beginning of the Philistines and the disappearance of the Philistines in this elite zone.
At the beginning of the